Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another week and with it another evening of fantastic top split racing action from the iRacing official GTE Sprint Series as brought to you on the Premier Sim Racing platform available only on PC known as iRacing. And wow, what a week we've got ahead of us ladies and gentlemen, because as we charge our way towards the conclusion of the 2025 Season 2 campaign, well, for our penultimate week, week 11 of 12, we are here in Germany at the ultimate Goliath of road racing, spanning just over 16 miles and consisting of 170 corners. That's right, you guessed it, we are at the Nürburgring Combined, or known as the Nürburgring Gesamtstrecke 24 hours, regular host on an annual basis to the ADAC 24 hours of the Nürburgring. It is a circuit that is steeped in motorsporting lore and legend. Indeed, the site of many a huge drive, whether it be from Formula 1 legend Jackie Stewart all the way through to modern day GT3 racers, and even the rising legends of YouTubers turned into real life racing drives of Jimmy Broadbent, Steve Alvarez Brown, and also Misha Chaldurin. Well, regardless of who you cheer and throughout the entire history who's put pay to the tarmac here in Germany and become a legend in their own right, anybody taken on this circuit and just make an entire lap, they could consider themselves to be a absolutely brilliant driver at that. But those who come around here to take victory over its extensive distance, those are enshrined immediately into legend. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you to this live broadcast from Circuit Side as we charge away into this top split broadcast, and this broadcast being available on youtube.com. Search for TX141TX, alternative Paul Walsh, and that's where you can be tuning in. In the commentary booth, you have myself, Paul Walsh, also known as TX141, or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. Now we bring you all your racing action as it unfolds today from our 1900 Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or you know, so coordinate time at UTC slot. A slightly different one. We normally do broadcast on the Friday, but due to scheduling, we have to cover the Wednesday as of this week, but still it means it's only a day after this week has turned over, and that means we've got an absolutely packed grid here, and our schedule for tonight, of course, one race, 45 minutes in duration, and due to get underway in just under 3 minutes time. Well, quickly, let's give you a recap of the season so far and what's lying in wait, and as we can see, we're almost to the end of our calendar. After today, we have one more week of racing to come, and that will be on Friday the 6th of June, where we'll bring you all the concluding action from the Detroit Grand Prix circuit at Belle Isle Park in the US city. But before then, before we get to the state of Michigan, we have to clear the Nürburgring Combined. And as we talked about only moments ago, spanning 16.12 miles and consisting of 170 corners. Well, indeed, this circuit map is one absolutely etched into the memory of any major motorsporting fan, and located near the city of Nürburg in the Eifel estate of Rheinland-Palatinate in Germany, or district I should say, in the state of Rheinland-Palatinate. Getting my coordinates correct, well, this is a circuit that is by no means easy to conquer. But without further ado, we're going to go straight to circuit side, ladies and gentlemen, rather than take a look at the rules, because the practice warm-up session has completed, and when it's time to head to the grid, remember there's no qualifying today because of the nature of the circuit. Qualifying has occurred for a time trial session earlier on in the week, and therefore all the drivers will make their way onto the grid, and as they do, these how they'll line up based on the closed qualifying time trial session which they've been able to take part in. And taking pole position, we've got plenty of new names here today. In a strength of field of 3,274, there were 4 splits when this lobby went live. That's the largest number of splits we have had all season, 4 of them, and we've got 27 drivers here. And line up at the very front of the field is the number 2 BMW M8 GTE driver of Harrison Crofer. He'll be joined on the front row by Daniel Cruz, the Hong Kong driver, once again back here to absolutely deliver, and behind him on row number 2 it'll be Jaroslav Tamiki and Michael Zill. Then we'll have on row 3 the combination of Virgilio da Silva, and it will then be Corey Turner, and behind them on row number 4 it will be the pairing of Maximilian Berg and Sylvain Depeche, who returns in the Porsche 911 RSR, and you can always count on the French driver from Cube Racing to deliver some absolute spectacles in the number 5. Completing your top 10, it'll be the combination of Roland Hurt in the Ford GT and Messiak Drotz, and then we do have on a row number 6 the pairing of what is Philippe Salinas and Aaron Cook. Then we have on row number 7 the combination of Pedro Amor and Juanjo Teruel, and then coming behind them it will be Gerald Steiner and Simon Bamba there from Effect Simulations, with row number 9 going to the combination of Giovanni Fini and Maris Blendia, and then completing your top 20 will be Philippe Helstein and Dante Oliva. Then we have behind them, still carrying on through our rows, well, on row number 11 it's going to be the combination pair of Karin Vende Ottelar, and we'll have alongside him none other than Till Nordman, and then we will see on, well, in fact it won't be Nordman there, the grid slightly being shuffled, and in fact I think a couple Overdrive's opting to start from the very back of the field. So instead, it will be Petros Timilis, who has made his way to the pit lane to start from the pit lane. And then on row number 12, it's going to be the combination of Marcus Pla Hernandez in the combination of Jacobus Vasiauskas. And then we do have on the final full row of the grid what will be Till Nordman, and I believe that is Matthias Rogalski. And starting last but not least, but promoted up the field due to some drives starting from the pit lane, it'll be Ricardo Agudo. So 27 drivers there, all in full flavour and spectacle. And as the field makes its way down the Dottinger Straight, we're not too far away from going green flag racing for our one and only time today. And we'll hold on to your hats, ladies and gentlemen, because the Nürburgring absolutely delivers when we go racing here in any castle machine. And these GTEs, it's going to feel like a brief trip back in time in the fact that these machines, well, they may no longer be raced in the real world of racing, but they were raced all the way up to 2023 in the World Endurance Championship. I'm not quite sure if they ever made the way around under race conditions around the Nürburgring circuit. I'm sure some historical almanac may be able to tell me there in the YouTube chat, but if they did, well, you're going to be hearing again very shortly the roar of 6-cylinder and 8-cylinder machinery absolutely tear its way around Germany and over the Eifel Mountains. We'll see Overdrive's brave what will be very challenging circumstances as they all get ready to go. Well, the field now makes its way into the last few corners here as they come breaking their way down behind the pace car into the combination section of Tiergarten and Hohenrhein. But very shortly, they will be making their way on through. And as they do, it'll be to Harrison Crofer to take us to the green for 45 minutes of incredible racing action in week number 11's Top Split broadcast here at the Nürburgring. As he makes his way out the final corner, he goes as quickly as he can, and Harrison Crofer takes us away then for 45 minutes of racing as they roar the way into the start-finish straight down towards the opening hairpin they go. And as they do, Overdrive's here absolutely on the attack immediately, but Crofer nailing that race start as alongside each other will be Daniel Cruz and Yaroslav Tamiki. Tamiki trying to make progress here in what is the Ferrari, albeit we've got Cruz on the inside defending. Further back, Maximilian Berg, they're finding himself at a 3 wide with Roland Hurt up the inside there as they switch from right into left. Gets very close there, the number 17 of Berg, but he's able to stay alive. Hurt going around the outside, and Roland Hurt in the end, how they're having a poor run off of the Yokohama S chicane. And as they come down in towards turn number 3, where it's going to be Hurt who gets ahead in the end. That Ford GT having a lot of acceleration right when it needs to, but roaring the way through a little bit further back, we do have Pedro Avmor and Wanjo Tarul fighting over position as Cook goes a little bit wide. And we're going to see their Salinas as well taking a brief excursion out wide in the lovely coloured Ford GT. They've got to ask him who his delivery maker is. And as he makes his way down towards the hairpin at the lowest point on the circuit, we're back on the brakes there, but on the outside, where he's going to have Aaron Cook up his inside, and Pedro Moore also trying to squeeze on through there in the Walker-Nurse machine. But coming out of the hairpin now, up through the Schumacher as they go, roaring the way up with Simon Bamber has had a difficult start, losing 2 places, but he's making his way back up there as he battles past Blendia. Blendia having a slow run, driver going a bit wide there. That's going to be Salinas as Bamber picks up another place here in the Effect Simulations GTE, and as he roars his way down in towards the braking zone here, he will move up into 16th place, which is where he started. Dante Oliver make his way around Blendia up the inside there in the Rexy machine, and onwards they go, but towards the front of the field. And they're still in the GP loop at the moment, but very shortly as they come in towards Vidal, they'll be making their way onto the Nordschleife loop for the first time today. And Crofer there with Daniel Cruz close behind, but Cruz are making a bit of a ham sandwich of the Vidal chicane and therefore having to step away and back off as they now head in towards Sabine Schmidt curve and begin the extensive journey through what is known as the Green Hell. But as they come on down then into the open left-hander, we'll see all the battling now start to calm down a little bit as everyone starts to settle down into what will be a more focused follow-the-leader style race as they've all got to try and keep it together as best as possible as we are in some slight technical hitches with regards to our overlay, but I get the feeling those will be restored very shortly. I think it's where Dry has towed to the pits before they've made it out of the GP loop, and that has in turn caused our timing overlay to glitch. And Blendia, they've been shown at the top of the stands, but he has shortcutted his way into the pit lane due to repair work. We'll get you a replay of that very shortly as to what's happened to Marius Blendia. But as the drives all weave and wind the way and through, well, now it's all going to be absolutely on the ragged edge of adhesion as they make their way for the opening sequence, which completes with Hoheiken and now into the quarterback of Hoa here, as we do see Tamiki, who had that brilliant qualifying performance. He's under a lot of pressure from Michael Zeal as they roar the way through for Flugplatz for the first time. Absolutely glued there. A bit of a brief run wide from the Corvette to Silva as they come undo, and now it's going to be the long charge all the way out towards Schweidenkreuz, and this is where it's going to get very tasty on what is cold tyres on the open lap here. Heavy fuel tanks as well. The rears of these cars are going to feel heavy laden, but no driver there steps out of line as they come down into the braking zone then for Arenberg. Well, Tamiki right now, that BMW M8 looking absolutely aggressive, but not close enough as they roar the way off the corner, but then they'll go in towards the forest, out in towards Aldnau Forst, and as they roar the way down through the compression, well, right now no changes between these drivers. And everyone's staying absolutely close together here, hooked together as much as possible. But rolling the way through it, left into right. And as they do, further back, Corey Turner, well, he is in at the 7 up. BMW M8, he's trying to make some progress here, as we do have a whole host and variety of GT machines here. In fact, it looks like the GT crowd have come out in full force with all 5 manufacturers being represented. And we do love to see it, albeit we've had a bit of an instant further back for Giovanni Fini and Simon Bamber. I think they've both had to come in together. And also Petros Temelis has been caught up in it. And we'll try and get an understanding of what happened there in due course. But let's stay with all the battling out of the circuit, as here comes Turner trying to make his way forward, but he's got Maciej Drot, who's very close behind them, the Corvette C8R. Onto the brakes they go. Drot's having a little bit of oversteer there under braking. You can see how the car twitched on braking, but he's been able to get to settle down now, and that will be the sign of what is a very heavily rear brake biased car, whereby the rear brakes are releasing before the front brakes. They're trying to do more work than the front. That's giving him plenty of rotation, but the problem is sometimes it's unnecessary rotation when you're braking in a straight line. But through Drive Factory X they go, and as they do, a very tricky sequence of course to get right and clear air, even more difficult in dirty air, given the fact you've got to turn nice and early and breaking their way into that one little hairpin that catches out so many drivers, that being known, I believe, as they do make the way around in terms of a Wettsiphon. But as he survives Wettsiphon, and now on towards the bridge he goes, and well, all the drivers are settling down here, no change at the moment, but very close, and everybody pushed each other to the limit on this open lap. But keeping in mind, of course, with this opening lap, well, it's all about getting that tyre temperature, it's all about gauging who you're racing with, and after that, then once you've settled in, you've got to start and make that progress. But roaring the way along, heading through at Lauder Links and in towards shortly the right-hander of Bergvoort, which sets up the long run all the way out towards Mud Curve, or Death Corner, as some like to refer to it. Again, how quick that left-hander is, as they roll the way through there. Cook having no sideways motion at all, looking absolutely composed in that BMW M8 as he makes his way out the rise. We jump on board the dashboard here of the M8 driver, and let's give you an idea of the speed he's picking up as he makes his way up towards one of the highest points in the circuit, roaring his way all the way through in the toe there in 6th gear, and gradually picking up the speed, 155 miles an hour so far, as he roars his way past the signpost there and heading up towards Mud Curve very shortly. Was he going to be close enough to look for a move? No, he's not. And in fact, it does look as though Cook has invested in a lot of downforce in the car here, because some of his rivals in front are pulling away quite significantly. So I think Aaron Cook going for a much more stable car, putting a lot of rear wing on the car, but it does mean in these sections, and particularly going down the Dottinger Höhe or the final stretch, that is where he's going to experience what will be the challenge of trying to stay ahead of other cars. So I think he's invested here in the stable option, but in doing so, what does he cost himself? Well, that's the question that we'll try and get an answer to. But heading in towards now the Caracola Carousel, and we're roaring the way through the left hand of the infamous corner, where it does have all the graffiti there. Some of that for fun, some of it in memory of drivers who've lost their lives at the Nürburgring over its extensive history, and everything in between. Well, they roar the way onwards here right now, nobody dropping the ball, albeit we can see Sylvain Depech under a bit of pressure to try and hold off Gerald Steiner, and I believe he recently did find himself in a battle side by side with Maximilian Berg, who found his way on through. And well, how exactly did Berg make the move? Let's get a quick replay and see what exactly happened. Now, this was only moments ago, and I believe this was coming in towards the curve, so it was Delpech getting quite close here in the toe in the Porsche 911. Looked to go side by side, oh my good lord, and will went for it a bit too tight on the line, carries a tiny bit too much speed, grazes the wall there, and Delpech, I think, used up all his 9 lives in a single stroke. That could have been very hairy, but it wasn't in the end. My goodness, that's brave and holding on to dear life. Earlier on in the lap, this is what happened to Giovanni Fini and Simon Bamber, and well, as they made the way on through, car rejoined. That was Bamber rejoin, I believe, and Fini just coming to a gradual halt there. It looks though some damage on the car, and that cost him the run then. I think Bamber also picking up the same. So what happened to Simon Bamber here is the question, and this was Bamber making his way up through. Oh, that's the number 9 getting it wrong. Bamber coming into the scene of the number 9, and that was Fini. So that explains what happened to the pair of them. They had an altercation making their way into Hoorhaken before Kudebakker, and that's how the race ended, and that's unfortunate because two very strong drivers, and in the end it hasn't worked out for the pair of them. But let's come back to your live race, and we've got plenty more racing to go. And as we do, well, where is everybody? I hear you ask. Well, they're making their way towards the end of the open lap here, as we do see a three-way battle for 16th place between Philippe Salanaz, Philippe Hilstein, and Jacobus Vasilkasas as they roar the way in towards the Kleiner Carousel, or the small carousel as it translates into English, I believe. And as they roar the way out of the corner, well, I studied GCSE German, but I don't think it's going to get too handy today. Well, that Ford GT of Salanaz right now looking absolutely wide there as they come through the right-hander and over the crest, and around they go and onto Dottinger Höhe. But this will be where we get to see who's exactly running more rear wing than the other, and who set up the gears for the car for top speed versus better acceleration, because it is a very long stretch as they make the way under wheels the Bilstein boards. But as they head up towards the top point, we're all in the draft here. Nobody wants to peel out initially until they're extremely close. I want to leave it to the last minute, but here comes Hilstein as he looks around the outside. The Corvette's starting to surge forward. We do know that BMW normally does have the highest top speed at most circuits, given the relative balance of performance, but you can trim that top speed out to give it a bit more stability. And as they make the way now through the left left-hander, and down they go. Well, Hellstein got ahead initially, but here comes Thanos looking back, but he's not able to find his way through. So after one lap of racing, it is Harrison Crover who continues to lead after starting on pole. He's being chased by Daniel Cruz, who's fallen back to 1.8 seconds. Then in third, it's going to be Michael Zill, or is it, as he goes all the way on the inside there, battling with the Ferrari driver, Yaroslav Tamiki, and in the end, Tamiki deciding to back off there in the Ferrari, the only Ferrari inside the top 10. In fact, the only Ferrari on the grid here today. He's doing fantastic in the hit so far in the number 4. He's with his door number in 4th place, and onwards he may go as he makes his way through the left-hander at turn at number 3. He's got Virgilio Da Silva in 5th behind him, and then we do have Roland Hurt in 6th, ahead of Maximilian Berg in 7th, and then it's Sylvain Depech in 8th, ahead of Corey Turner. I believe the two drivers might be having a little bit of swap of places there. I believe there's a bit of a story, and in fact we might be able to get a replay of that shortly, as Depech taking a bit of an excursion wide there, coming through the right-hander at turn number 5, down towards the turn 6 hairpin he goes through the long curve onto the brakes, and Depech pushing onwards here, and then from Turner in 9th, it is Maciek Drodz who completes the top 10 with best the rest in 11th, Gerald Steiner, who's trying to get all over the back of Drodz with Wanjo at Terrell also closing up. But that battle between Depech and Turner, what happened? And here was the quick replay of it. And as they made the way through the left-hander, where it was coming out of the corner, and in the end, I think it might have been a timing graphic error because, well, he was well ahead, and in fact, there's the explanation, a slight connectivity issue, and Depech making his way back from the Eifel very quickly, so that explains what happened between the two of them. But going from our replay then, and on lap number 2 we go, and as they do, well, they're making their way for the GP loop at the moment, as Steiner looking close, but not quite close enough versus Drodz, as they roar the way through the right-hand kink, and up the hill towards the Vidal chicane they go, the fast version of course. Formula 1 used to race on the slow version, but up the inside it's going to be a fast cut there from Gerald Steiner. Up the inside, gets it done. Sylvain Depech meanwhile, oh no, oh my good lord, and that is Steiner's race, suddenly going from great to disaster in the space of only seconds. Sylvain Depech end up sideways, and in the end, well, Depech is falling all the way down in a crippled car, and he'll make his way in the pit lane, or he'll try to. He's going to creep across the pit entry line there, but Sylvain Depech, he'll quote-unquote jump to the front of the field. That will glitch our timing tower again, but unfortunately for the Frenchman, his race comes to an abrupt halt. But how did that happen? Well, here's the quick replay to explain. And well, Depech was running comfortably in 8th place at the time. Into Vito he went, hard on the brakes, and in the end takes a bit too much of the second apex curve. It upsets the rear of the car, goes sideways. Steiner comes out, he's got nowhere to go, and even though Depech was trying to reverse out the way, and in the end it was too late in the day. And well, for the Frenchman, you can understand he had to get the car to stop before he put reverse gear in. You can't shove the car into reverse whilst it's rolling forward. That break the transmission, and it did not work out there for the pair of them, and that is heartbreak. And well, from a heartbreak, meanwhile, others will take the opportunity here to rise. And speaking of rising places, well, it's going to be Vasi Kolkos as they roar the way up towards the Flugplatz curve. And well, he's just made his way ahead in the yellow BMW M8 versus the black and yellow machine, the Corvette C8R there of Philipp Hellstein, as they roar the way now all the way out towards Arenberg. It's been a dramatic opening couple of laps so far. We're only on lap number 2, we should point out. We're not on lap number 3, even though our time tower does say that. It's because, oh my good lord, and hold the phone there, as that is contact between Dacia Kalkas and Hellstein, and in the end, Hellstein into the barrier there, carrying through. Schweiden cries, well, his race surely is going to be towed to the pits. He's going to try and get it turned. He won't be able to in the end, and that's another driver who falls by the wayside. They're dropping like flies at the moment, and well, I get the feeling it is the pressure of the occasion here, racing around the Nürburgring, but as they roll the way around and all the way on through, well, right now, all the drivers absolutely, those who are still standing here. Indeed, racing around here is just as much a question of survival as it is ability, albeit ability does normally indicate your ability to survive, interestingly enough. Well, as the drivers make the way on through, there's still more to come, as that's a change of places there, as Yaroslav Tamiki falling back in another position, as that is going to be Michael Zill up into 4th place, and well, a lovely move there up the inside into the deep right-hander of Callan Hard, but as he comes on down now through drive at Rex, well, it's going to be a case whereby the Corvette driver is going to try and break away from the Ferrari and just keep his head down for as long as he can here and try to gap the distance, and Zill will be trying to chase down the remainder of the front runners, albeit we should point out, in fact, the places we are referring to, that's the battle for 3rd, not the battle for 4th, because we do have a driver erroneously at the top of the tower. Sylvain Depech being in the pit lane, having had to be towed to the pit lane from this lap, or towing his way in, and therefore he has been jumped forward a lap. Don't worry, that will be corrected at the end of this one, and we'll see all the field in the correct order once again. But as the drivers continue the way on through, we do say hello there to Wehavati. I believe that's how I do say your username. I might be wrong on that one, I'm doing my best, and saying pretty certain the fastest cars that have officially raced at Nords for some time now are GT3s, series that had GT were World Endurance Championship, the European Le Mans Series, and IMSA, and none of those went there. Well, I really do appreciate the insight there, and I think you're absolutely spot on, to be fair, because I do know that IMSA have never raced at Nords. I believe WEC's never raced at Nords. I'm not sure about ELMS, but I'm going to take your word for it, and therefore GTs have never officially raced here in reality. I'm sure there's been some testing in GTs or GT prototypes or equivalent machines. Well, of course, all teams and all manufacturers will would love to use this circuit as a tested circuit, and it is used as one of the benchmark circuits of when cars are about to enter production runs, such as, of course, the big showdown and the somewhat perhaps controversial, was it done with a production car or was it done with a modified car? The recent F45 Honda Civic Type R setting the new lap record for the fastest front-engine front-wheel drive production car around Nürburgring Nordschleife. But let's stop the phone there, as it's gone very wrong for the Ferrari driver of Tamiki. In fact, he's been able to keep it onwards, and what on earth has happened to that Ford GT behind? And that is Roland Hurt who's ended up in the barrier, I think, coming up towards the, well, coming out of the all the way run, all the way into that right hand at the very top of the hill. Excuse me, that's still struck up before he got to Caracola Carousel, but for Hurt, it's come to an abrupt halt. But can we find out what happened to both Josef Tamiki, who has lost some more time to Virgilio da Silva, and then find out what happened to Hurt? The answer is yes, we can, and here's a quick replay to explain. Now this was Tamiki making his way in the chase through the right-hander and into the braking zone of the Stillstrucker corner. Onto the brakes he went. Does the rear just come around on him? Yes, it does, albeit very well held there. Congrats to the man. And then, oh my good lord, and that was Roland Hurt just going straight onto the barrier, and when doing so, hitting the wall, collapsing the suspension, a further breakage there. And well, unfortunately, the Ford GT driver not as lucky as his Ferrari counterpart, and the Ferrari driver coming away with that unscathed practically, with a little bit of brushed off paint. And we'll credit where it's due there in the fact he absolutely managed to get that stopped on a dime before it went to the barrier. But as everyone continues to push onwards here, and those continue to survive, try to avoid the barriers as much as possible. When we did have the grand total of 27 starters, we are already down to 17, in fact 16 runners at this point, so we've got a very high rate of attrition. But with that rate of attrition now, we will start to see those remaining, where they've got to get their heads down here and look to do battle and duel over the remaining distance. And of course there is a big strategic element here as well, with the fact the fuel tanks will not take drivers to the end on fuel capacity. They will need to come into the pit at some point in order to stock up on fuel, and with that, in order to get unscathed to the end of the race on fuel capacity, they're going to need to be smart, put the right amount of fuel in. Nobody wants to scrimp the fuel around here. No tyre changes are expected, to be fair, albeit this will be an aggressive race on tyres, and it's all going to be about trying to keep your head together as you manage that tyre wear. But right now for Tyrrell, he's got to try and just keep his head together, because he does have closing on him the orange BMW M8 of Aaron Cook, and we do know that Aaron Cook is running a much more downforce orientated BMW M8 compared to some of his rivals out there, and the fact he hasn't got the straight line speed, but he has got the corner speed. Oh goodness me, and Wonder Tyrrell almost ends up in the barrier there as he made his way through Galgenkopf corner. Boy, did he collects it together. That is going to be what we like to refer to in the business as a brown trousers moment for many in the garage. But as he roars his way down the backstretch, down the dot in the her, well, right now it's going to be side by side here, and we can see the BMW, it starts to get ahead, and then suddenly it really runs out of steam, does Aaron Cook's BMW M8. In fact, it's losing so much speed here as they make the way onwards over the rise of the Bilstein board. So he has to tuck in again, and this is going to be one of the big talking points of this race between these two drivers, and the fact that Cook has all the speed through the corners, but if he doesn't have it on the straights, he's got to find some magic over the course of the Nordschleife loop in order to get ahead. The one thing he can potentially do is try to do a lot of fuel saving behind as he gets very aggressive on the brakes there, and that's another sign as well. If he was running a little bit less rear wing, he wouldn't be able to be as bold in the BMW M8 on the brakes, albeit Tyrrell will dictate the pace, but you can see the differences in the two. Tyrrell being a lot more sensitive on entry there into the final sequence of corners at Hohenrain. Meanwhile, Cook absolutely planting the brakes down, albeit not locking up, and that goes to show you he's absolutely got these brakes locked in and dialed in perfectly. But Cook staying close to his rival there as they both get promoted into the top 10, and this is the battle for 9th now as they switch from right to left. A little bit of brake dust there coming up from the brakes of Tyrrell, a little lock up on the front right, I can imagine, and right now these two continue to goad each other on, but it's fascinating to see. Rolling the way on through and up towards the next sequence of corners. Well, we do say hello to Sir Bottle Job as well, tuning in. I do believe a World Endurance Championship fan, and indeed a fan of GTE machines, and also saying there, Weck had a few years at the GP Loop and not at Nords, and thank you for the further insights, Sir Bottle Job, and I appreciate you guys giving us the insight that we may lack here, albeit we try to know everything we possibly can, but also you guys, the fans, are the ones who keep all the, what is the fascination of motorsport alive, and therefore any contributions and insights you can give in the YouTube chat, we are always grateful for, and give yourselves a pat on the back. But as the drives roll the way around, then we're on to lap number 3. We're not quite at the halfway point, but we will be at the end of this lap. Laps continue to trickle upwards, and well, these isolated battles, they're not just outside the top 5 and the bottom end of the top 10, but they're also right at the back of the field, because here's your last two drivers currently running, and it's Marcus Pla Hernandez in the very colourful HKS livery colours almost there, but I do believe an actual racing team's colours there, albeit it just reminds me of the HKS machines, particularly from the 90s and early noughties in the Max Power magazines. If you are fond of those, if you're born in the United Kingdom, you may know what I'm referring to, even in the United States, but outside that you may be a bit confused what I'm referring to, but imagine tuning magazines, albeit back in the era of the Fast and Furious ages. As they roll the way through the left into right here, coming on through the Bilstein curve, as it's known, or making their way all the way down now and up towards the Vidal chicane. Well, Hernandez here with Rogalski behind him, and Rogalski falling backwards a little bit there in the battle of the two Porsche 911 RSRs, but again, it can be set up, and also one driver mainly much more familiar with the run over the GP loop, which is only, where is it, even a 10th of the Nordschleife loop? My feeling is it probably isn't. It's probably about 1/15th for the distance, but they roar the way onto it, making the transition there at what is known as T13 and into Sabine Schmidt curve in honour of the infamous Lady of the Nürburgring, and the one who tried to set a sub 10-minute lap on the Top Gear TV show and Ford Transit van, albeit they had to take all the weight out the car, including the other presenters, but in the end up going for that absolutely brilliant goal of chucking a Ford Transit around. Definitely recommend, if you haven't seen it, watch it on YouTube, albeit do it after this broadcast. And as they roar the way around, well, Hernandez right now starting to break away a little bit from Rogalski, who is staying close but losing little by little through the corners, it would seem, albeit saying that. Rogalski had a lovely run there as they make the way into a Tornac and roaring the way into Quiddelbacher shortly, and as he does so, these two drivers absolutely keeping each other honest, and that's what this is all about right now. It really is a game of cat and mouse at incredibly high speeds as they roar the way through up towards Flugplatz curve and through the right-hander, and Rogalski, I think, feeling a bit more confident once the speed picks up. It's in the low speed corners where he seems to struggle. The high speed corners, that's where his Porsche starts to come alive. But from them, let's look a little bit further back up the order, and we do look to Jacobus Vasiakolkas as he roars his way into the compression and then to Ardenau Forst, and as he does so, oh my good lord, taking a lot of curve there. That is brave coming for the compression, taking that much curve. Well, if you've got the car set up for it on the suspension springs, you can do it, but taking a lot of curve there, what it does, it unsettles the car, and when you go uphill as a result of the compression, what it certainly does is it causes the entire car to want to bottom out, and that's where you see the sparks fly, and it feels absolutely brilliant but brutal at the same time, whether in real life or on the simulator, because you suddenly feel all the car and you as a driver all being compressed into one space. So you try to roar up towards Aldenau Forst, but as they head through Metzgersfeld and now down in towards the right-hander here of Callan Hard, almost said Spiegel curve there. That's coming up the Spiegel curve S sequence here, but through that left into right they go. The chicane where many get it wrong, where they try to go flat out, particularly on cold tyres, but even on warm tyres, as Dante Olivia does almost that there in the Rexy machine. But coming on through there, well, Olivia holds on at this time, but as he does so in the number 16, he's trying to make an impression on Vasikos, but it's not working out here. The BMW drive just seems to be in a bit of a happier place. But from them, well, let's come a little bit further up the field, because coming through Lauda Links and into Bergwerk corner, it's the battle of the Corvette versus the Ferrari, and we're riding on board looking back from the rear of Jaroslav Tamiki's car. He's trying to hold on to 5th place here, but the Corvette and Maximilian Berg is pushing forwards here, and Maximilian putting it to the max, no pun intended, in terms of absolutely trying to stay glued to the back of the number 4 Ferrari, the only Ferrari here flying the flags proud for the Italian mark, the prancing horse. But can he hold off the fast charging charge of the 6.2 litre V8 machine from America? Will they head up the rise? The answer is yes, he seems to be able to at the moment at least, as Berg falls back. And again, this might be another sign that Berg is running a lot more downforce, because look at the gap that opened up as a result from Bergwerk all the way up towards Mut curve, and well, that Ferrari does seem to be running a much higher top end speed, if not less rear wing. And of course you can achieve different top end speeds based on how much downforce you run, but also the gearing. The gears on the GT machines are fully adjustable, unlike their GT3 counterparts in the modern era of racing, or at least on iRacing, and that means here that drivers can really set up the car to suit the circuit and their driving style, but go for the carousel. And Tamiki really not carrying any speed through there. We carried some, but nowhere near as much as that Corvette that suddenly gains leaps and bounds over him as they roll the way through Poston 147, that left-hander, and now up the rise they go to the highest point on the circuit, all the way at the very top of Hoacht, will roaring the way over the crest, and then it'll begin the downhill descent here. Well, right now for Berg, he's close, but not close enough as we jump on board here with the number 17 driver going slowly. Hold up, is that Zil? That's Zil going very slowly there, so I think he's been involved in some sort of altercation or off, because suddenly he's dropped out the hub for 4th place. Well, right now this takes even greater significance as Corey Turner's also starting to close up to this battle. Well, through they go then down into the sweeping left-hander, getting ready for Brunchen corners soon. Well, we've got a little bit of way to go through the right. You can see here the drivers will let the cars roll out to a degree, but not too far, as they now come through at the infamous YouTube corner, or Brunchen as it's known, out to the right-hander and up towards the left-hander ice curve. And from here now it's going to be one wide all the way through. You don't go too wide from this segment onwards unless you're very brave and you can trust the driver, because it's going to be the run down here for the Stefan Beloff S, as with the jump, and as they make the way over, they come off of all 4 wheels for a brief moment and then come back to terra firma. Well, through they go, and now in towards Flansgarden Zwei, but roaring the way in towards the very fast sequence. We'll hold on and listen in. and the absolute wonderful roar of the Corvette. They're chasing after the V8 Ferrari as well, and just hearing the tyres screech there as they're battling on the tarmac, and the commitment from both drivers right now is absolutely unbelievable as he makes way for the Kleiner carousel and Berg close. But again, you can see he closes up as soon as we get to a corner sequence. That's where he closes, but now come through the right-hander Galgenkopf and onto the Dottinger Hoa. How much time can he get out this corner? Can he get close enough to be glued to the back of Tamiki's car? Because we believe this Ferrari's got a lot of straight line speed by comparison. And look at that in the bottom right corner of your screen. You'll see that gap is actually increasing, not decreasing. And Virgilio da Silva is the best part of half, well, he's 4.5 seconds up the road. So right now, Tamiki does not have a tow. He's just got a Ferrari that's got a lot more straight line speed. And Berg, as much as he's trying to wheel this Corvette onwards, well, right now, with the lack of top speed he's running, he's going to lose all the time to that Ferrari. And he'll know he'll have to do it all over again when they go on to the next lap. But of course, there could be a bit of strategy here. And if Berg can do a lot of fuel saving over the run of the green hell in terms of Nordschleife loop, or when he makes one through, that can be where he can make the gains. But we'll have to see, ladies and gentlemen, because our race leader and second place driver, so Krofer and Cruz, are both into the pit lane already. Silver's going to be in soon, we believe, and all these drivers, in fact, will be peeling as they get towards the halfway point of the race. Further back, we've got more fighting going on between Wandre Tyrrell and Aaron Cook, as Cook in the BMW M8 is trying to make his way past the Porsche as the two marks make the way on home territory, and they'll shortly come into the pit lane. But right now, everybody coming into the pits at the end of this lap. They've been able to get the fuel tanks to go 3 laps, but then they'll have to fill them up to do another 3 laps before the end of the race duration. I don't think we're going to get 4 laps in. If we do, that's going to be a magical miracle. But as everyone peels into the pits, as quickly as they come in, it's then going to be a departure. Oh my good lord, and in fact, it's very close. That's Daniel Cruz glued to the back of Harrison Krofer. They leave the pit lane, and as they do, well, Daniel Cruz has leapt forward as a result of the pit stops, and with the ability to save some fuel in that Corvette. But as he comes on out, the gap now, it was 2 seconds when they made the way into the pit lane, and it's suddenly slashed all the way down to less than half a second when they leave it. Well, it will naturally open back up a little bit here, but as they come through the left into the right, Daniel Cruz right now, well, he's definitely gained. He gained exactly 2 seconds in the pits versus rival Krofer, so the gap that Krofer gained, he's now got to do it all over again. But the one thing he does have in his ace up his sleeve is that Krofer is the faster of the two drivers overlap. But is that because Cruz was saving fuel and saving some tyre life? Was they both run deep there through the opening hairpin of turn number 6? Well, you'd imagine if both drivers trying to get themselves acquainted with the car once again. And you might be asking, well, what do we mean by that? Well, they've lost a bit of tyre temperature by being stationary for so long in the pit lane. Even though it was only the best part of 15 seconds or so, you lose tyre temperature and you've suddenly got to get it back, and you also lose a bit of brake temperature. But coming on through, as we do see Corey Turner there, who's managed to get himself between Tamiki and Berg. So some more change of the foot in the pit stops, and that is now Corey Turner up into 5th place. And we do have 2 BMWs and 2 Corvettes inside the top 5 and a Ferrari. But here comes a Corvette looking to break its way back into the top 5. And that's going to Maximilian Berg, looking one way then the other, but decides he's not going to go for it here. Instead, he backs off. I think he's eager to make an impression, but not that eager, and he's going to try and find his way through. But here's the problem now for the number 17 driver. He's in a Corvette that's very fast through the corners, but it's not fast on the straights. So therefore, if that BMW is set up to be quick on the straights, he may have the similar situation to what he's had behind Tamiki, which is as close as he can get. He can huff and puff all he wants, but he's never going to be able to get fully alongside it unless he's bold under braking. But of course, when we go on to the Nordschleife loop, the problem is too wide for the Nordschleife loop. It requires a lot of commitment and it requires trust, and trust may not be in ample supply here when these two are absolutely going for gold. But as they come through turn 13 and in towards the Bean Schmidt curve, well, Berg close, but can he do anything about it? No, he can't. Meanwhile, you're Eifel. Oh my goodness, that's a big snap sideways, and there's going to be Daniel Cruz around the outside, but Cruz has to back off there, and Harrison Krofer almost losing it, literally on the limits there as he comes on through. Well, Cruz has backed off, the gap's opened up to the second, but right now Harrison Krofer's got to be thin, as though this BMW needs to be tamed. He needs to reel it back in, because Daniel Cruz has got to think, right, okay, I've got to get closer again, because that BMW is struggling. Well, through full Platts they go, through the right-hander, and your number 2 and number 1 driver in that order in terms of how they run. The 2 top drivers in this iRacing lobby right now are going to push each other all the way to the limit here on lap number 4, and we'll have at least 2 more laps after this one, if not 3. But as they roar their way into a shredded Kreuz, well, that gap coming down again. Daniel Cruz actually on a mission, as you can see the Corvette twitching over the rise as he makes way through. That's for the dirty areas where he's pushing it to the limit, roaring his man down here, and right now there is nothing between these two, and Harrison Krofer looks to be on the back foot, albeit that's not to say he can't pull this off, but he's going to have to dig in deep here and tame the BMW back in. If he can do that, he might be able to get Daniel Cruz to put a bit too much pressure on himself. But Cruz, to be fair, after a brilliant pit stop, getting himself right back in the hunt. Was anything between these two right now as they are all the way on around. But can we get a quick replay of how that all played out? And I think the answer is yes, we can. And well, let's see how it started. And this was coming through the right-hander, taking a lot of curb, roaring his way through it and into left and right. And look at that. You could see he took too much apex curb on entry there. And it just caused the Jägermeister BMW to slide loose. When then he got it stopped. Daniel Cruz was trying to be the opportunist there, but backed out last minute because Crowell was never going to let the #1 Corvette make its way around the outside there, and Cruz being the opportunist in the end of realising the reality and backing off way too, well, in fact backing off just in time before it was way too late, I should say, and that's why we'll see these two continue to go racing. But as they do, through the Spiegel curve and into Dreifat Rex, and Cruz falling back to a second now, but he might be just biding his time here, might be taking his time, trying to build himself up and keep that distant pressure on. We'll have to see what he can do, but from him, let's come a little bit further down the order and look to Jacobus Vasikauskas, as we do see the American driver here in the BMW chasing after Dante Oliva as they roar the way onwards then and in towards the left-hander at distance, albeit I believe they are just making their way through Metzgertsfeld, and shortly they'll be coming into Cannon Hard Curve. But as they do, we look back from the rear of the leading Porsche 911 RSR. These two fighting over ninth place right now in a great little scrap between the two of them, and on paper at least, Dante Oliva is the faster of the two drivers over a single lap here at the Nürburgring. But of course, the theory is very different from the reality, and sometimes all it takes is for a car to be behind you, and that mental pressure can suddenly cause you to lose a lot of time over a single lap because you just in the end take your foot off the gas. You don't mean to as a driver, but because you're spending more time worrying about the guy chasing you. And speaking of the guy chasing these two, you've got Philippe Stalnas in the Ford GT. He's coming on quickly. You may be able to see a set of headlights a bit further back behind the yellow BMW if you have got your binoculars on. And well, if you do see it in the distance, that is Stalnas. He is closing very quickly on these two, so we might have the resumption of that freeway fight that we did see from much earlier on in the race today as we do head towards the final 15 minutes of racing. But as we have Oliver gradually pulling away there, Vasikauskas heading in towards Bergwerk shortly, as these two separate their distance. We'll look to Stalnas a bit further back. The Ford GT driver right now pushing onwards, in fact really coming alive and closing up to Vasikauskas quickly, much more quickly than perhaps we even anticipated. No, he was going fast, and well, they share the same camera estate now as they come onwards. But as they do, well, some good news as well, ladies and gentlemen. Two other drivers who were in the pit lane due to damage, they have made their way back out the pit lane, albeit they are registered as a lap down. We do have in 17th Pedro Amor, and in 18th place we do have Philip Hellstein, I believe, and I think we also have what is Roland Hurt. He's back out there, so I think we've got 19 runners. In fact, Amor is retired from this race. We just had confirmations. We have got 18 runners, but it's Amor in 17th. He will gradually give way to Hellstein and Hurt, who will make the way past him, albeit a lap later than anticipated, I suspect, given the delta in terms of when drivers have towed to the pits and made their way back out. But great to see some drivers who have been in big shunts getting the cars back out there and looking to give it their all. But speaking of what happened to Pedro Amor, this is what happened to the driver, and this was on lap number 4. Now here, oh my good lord, and that is a nasty impact. I believe that was coming through Hudson-Bach, unless I'm mistaken. Yes, just for the whole hiking curve. And, well, the number 25 BMW, after a shunt to the barrier like that, that is not recovering anytime soon. It's understandable why that car's had to be retired. We're just going straight on there. I think a lock-up, carrying too much speed after the pit stops. And, well, in doing so, ending his race before he could get to the final lap. And as all the drivers come on around and we come back to you live at Racing Pictures, we've still got more to come, no doubt about it. And speaking of which, well, here's Yosef Tamiki, who's in full place at the moment. De Silva has run away from this. But right now, we've got the queue as they come down through the Stefan Beloff S and in towards Flansgarden Zwei, in the way then through these curves, and as they do, well, Corey Turner right now in the 7-Up machine, he's got all the fizz and bubbly behind him because he roars his way on through right now. Well, I think he's absolutely ready to explode for another place on the circuit, but from them, going slowly, is Daniel Cruz. Oh no, that's gone very wrong for Daniel Cruz. He was in second. I think he's had a big shunt to the barrier coming through Flansgarden Zwei, and the number 1 driver right now just trying to limp it round to the pit lane to get some repair work on the car and finish this race. You can see that front bumper is pretty much hanging on with string at this point, albeit it won't be hanging on with string, it'll be hanging on with something that's connecting it to the car. They'll be a bit stronger than string most hopefully, but the key point being here, that is a very wounded Corvette, and I don't think it's going anywhere fast down the Dottinger Höhe, so I suspect he'll pull aside and just let the field come through. Everyone will make their way around him. I think he'll just stick to his racing line, in fact, as they all pull on through, and now it's going to be Tamiki up into 3rd place, but I don't think it's going to be long here before Turner has something to say, nor Maximilian Berg, albeit Berg, look at the speed delta. Berg's just got no straight line speed whatsoever, but he's got so much speed in the corners, and that's the difference. But here comes Turner then all over the back of Tamiki as they make the way onwards. He couldn't be any closer if he tried. He's practically pushing the man along as they make the way out towards the Bilstein board. He's giving him a little bit of tap there, a little bit of bump draft. They can do it in GTE machines, albeit you've got to be careful. And down they go. Turner backs off at this point as we ride on board with the number 12 at 7 up BMW M8. And as he comes through the left into the right here, Home Rain, well, he's going to back off there. That Ferrari looking very happy in these braking zones. Tamiki right now, don't know what he's done with the setup of that Ferrari, but I think many Ferrari drivers in the GTs would love to know what the setup he's running on that car, because it just looks so happy coming down from the high speeds into these low speed corners. It may not be the fastest through the corners, but it's very stable. Well, Tamiki is making it look as though that car is on rails, and given the fact it's arguably the most precious of the GTs in terms of the fact if it's not in its operating window, it very quickly tells you the Ferrari compared to its peers, albeit all of these cars do, perhaps minus the Corvette, and to a lesser extent the BMW M8. But the point being, the Ferrari, normally a bit of a diva, but right now Tamiki has definitely tamed that machine and is making the prancing horse his own, trying to hold on to that third place. But as we continue to ride on board with Turner, making his way through the right-hander at turn number 5 and down towards the turn 6 hairpin he goes. Well, as he does so, in front of him is Virgilio Da Silva, and Da Silva in fact has fallen back towards him a little bit. The gap has come all the way down to 1.5 seconds. I think there was an off track for Da Silva that may explain it, and I think it might have been the altercation that we had with Daniel Cruz, albeit, speaking of which, we've got a replay coming up, and this is what happened to the man who was second. It was Daniel Cruz, and an abrupt meeting with the wall. Well, in fact, this was before that. I believe he was chasing after Harrison Crofer, made his way into Mut Curve corner. Oh, and he had and he had traffic there as he made his way from Mut Curve, and the traffic, I don't think, saw him coming. And Cruz, in the end, not wanting to back off, understandably chasing Crofer, but in the end, by not backing off, it's come back to haunt him, and that's why the front bumper has suddenly come off the car, because of that impact to the back of the car in front. We're not quite sure whose car that was. I think that might have been Michael Zill's car, unless I'm mistaken, but that's how they came together. And then subsequently, this is what happened on the remainder of lap number 4 for Virgilio Da Silva, who's now running in second. And I believe this was coming through. That's the number 15 he was racing with there. And Philip Helstein, who was a lap down at the time, will roaring the way out of the corner, going wide there in the dirty out. And it was Helstein's car that we saw Daniel Cruz have the tap on the back with through Mut Curve. So that explains everything and fills in all the loose ends. We do apologise there because we thought it was Michael Zill. No, it was not. It's Philip Helstein. And in at the end, Daniel Cruz getting caught up behind the 15 at the wrong place at the wrong time, and it all fell apart. But coming back to your live racing then, where we go onto the penultimate lap of racing here at the Nürburgring Gesamtstrecke 24-hour. And as they roll the way through, well, this race definitely not 24 hours, but I think for Salvo drivers it'll feel like it's been 24 hours, even though at the end it'll only be 45 minutes plus a lap. But as they come out of the roaring open section of the Nordschleife Loop, well, we do have the ongoing battle for third between Jaroslav Tamiki and Corey Turner, with Maximilian Berg, the Corvette that's got all the corner speed but no straight line speed. He will be there for a bit, but he'll be there midway round the lap, and he's going to have to try and find very inventive ways to get ahead before the end of the lap and try and break away. But whilst he's doing that, well, further back we still do have Daniel Cruz carrying on. Cruz is still going despite a damaged car. Well, that's going to be at Maciek Drods, making his way around the outside there from Flugplatz all the way up to the Schrodenkreuz corner. So smooth running there for Maciek Drods, who's now up into 6th place, and Daniel Cruz gradually falls away there little by little, but credit where it's due to Cruz. He is trying to get that number 1 Corvette all the way to the checkered flag, even if it is experiencing what would be known as technical issues, or the meatball flag, which is the black flag with the orange circle in the middle of it, which means you should come into the pits within 3 laps of that being awarded, because you need to have something repaired, replaced or investigated on the car. But right now he's not going to have anything get investigated. The only thing he'll be investigating is whether he can get to the end, and he's going to believe the answer to that question is yes, he can. As Tamiki, they're going very sideways coming through Ardenau Force, but he gets it back together, and as he does so, we're looking back from the rear of the 3rd place. We're going to stay with this battle for a bit more, given the fact these are the 2 closest drivers on the circuit. And we did see a bit of a slide there. Now, that might be the sign that Tamiki is now starting to feel a bit of pressure, or perhaps he's trying to push the Ferrari a little bit more than it wants to be pushed at this time, as he gets a very late apex there coming down through Callan Hard corner. A deceptive corner. You want to go as late as possible there, even though the corner suggests you want to go nice and early. It's a much longer corner than it looks, and it's a much slower corner than it looks as well. But get that late apex, and you suddenly can pick up a load of speed, given the camber at the late apex. There's not as much camber on entry. But as they make the way down through Versifen and on towards the bridge they go, right now, nothing between these two. Turner Understandably, in the dirty air, he will gradually concertina back and forth versus the Ferrari, but the BMW is staying there, absolutely transfixed to the back of the Ferrari, and this battle definitely won right now, where both drivers are continuing to just keep their heads down. As we can see there, Tamiki have a little bit of wobble coming out of the right hand of X-Mule, but that's because of the bump in the middle of the road. We're to expect that, but the point being, he's definitely pushing on, and just in front, well, there's your second place man in the 25. That is Virgilio Da Silva, and Da Silva is not putting away anymore. In fact, he is gradually being caught up to here, albeit coming out of Bergwerk. He's had a much better run compared to his rolls. He has gained the best part of half a tenth on the exit of Bergwerk, but the point being that Da Silva is no longer looking comfortable the best part of 2 to 2.5 seconds away. He's being caught very gradually, and we could have a three-way fight for the runner-up spot at the end of this race if he does lose a bit more time. So it's going to be an interesting run all the way to checker flag on the next lap. Well, speaking of the driver who's going to take us that next lap, he is 18 seconds up the road. Here he is, Harrison Crofer right now, very lonely leader after the fall of Daniel Cruz, but it was close between them on the opening half of the race, and also coming out of the pits. But then Crofer got things done when he needed to and held track position, and in the end traffic came favourably for him, but it didn't for Cruz coming up towards mid curve. But from him we then look to Wandro Tarul, and he's coming up behind Cruz as well, and he's going to go around the outside here. This will be before mid curve, so he'll be absolutely clear as he makes his way through Costerol and heading in towards the fast left hander now. Well, the Porsche drivers continue to push onwards, albeit in terms of pushing onwards, well, he's got a 10.5 second gap to Nasek Drods, and the gap to Drods is not really coming down, it's actually going the other way. The one thing that is coming down, however, is the gap between Wandro Tarul and Dante Oliva, and we may see the two Porsche drivers sharing the same camera time in due course, as we'll see Cruz in the rear of the picture. And then we should see, there he is, the Rexy machine of Oliva as they head in towards the carousel. And roaring the way through, you can also see Vasikalkas there, also getting close. But whilst all this has been happening, I think we do need to make our way to Tamiki. Oh, no, and that is Tamiki who's end up in the barrier there. That's coming down. Oh, I think that's going to be a race over the Ferrari driver. The lone Ferrari falls. And how exactly did it fall? Well, that is going to be Turner now up into third place. And the answer is, here is your replay, ladies and gentlemen. And if you're a Ferrari fan, oh, could this be? In fact, he's just crawling along there. So for Yasa Tamiki, it was before he went off circuit. Can we get an even earlier replay on that? I think we might be able to. And here's the earlier replay of what happened. This was Corey Turner passing him. And was they made the way through. Are we going to see what happens? Tamiki making his way into Hoat. Oh no! And he goes wide, then hits the wall. It's so easy to make that mistake. And Tamiki then just carrying a bit too much speed. Mental pressure on him there from Corey Turner. Well, Turner gets the place in the end through attrition. And well, Yasa Tamiki will be absolutely gutted and frustrated with that one. I think that subsequent hit with the barrier, well, that's him there. I think just kicking himself for the fact he was only a lap and a third away from potentially pulling off an absolutely brilliant third place. But as he's towed to the pits, well, one falls, more carry on. We come back to your live racing, and that's going to be a pass. Oh my good lord, that is going to be very brave there from the Rexy machine of Oliva as Cruz continues to try and push on. He doesn't want to give in unless he absolutely has to. You can understand he's trying to drive it as safely as possible, but also not make it 100% easy for anyone to pass him, given he doesn't want to lose these places. I think right now he's battling upstream here, and the tide is definitely suppressing him, but he roars his way through Landsgarden Zwei. Well, next up will be Vasikalkas, and the American driver in the BMW will be looking for a straightforward move here, I suspect, looking to go outside to inside as they come in towards the long left-hander there of none other than Schwalben-Schwanz, albeit decides to back off, and I think this is quite smart driving from our number 22 driver in the fact he knows the Dustin Ahoa is coming up, and seeing a wounded Corvette that's falling through the field, knowing it's a driver who qualified much higher in the field. Well, Vasikalkas right now, who started this race 24th from the grid. He's just going to use his straight line speed to gradually make his way past down the Dustin Ahoa and disappear off into the distance. But as he does so, well, the man who's going to take this race to the full distance, it's Harrison Crofer here as he goes on to the final lap. Lap 6 of 6 that will get him within the 45 minutes. We will hit the 45-minute clock roughly about halfway around the Nordschleife Loop. And Corey Turner's into the pits. Oh, well, that's a surprise and not a welcome one if you're a 7-Up fan of the BMW, because he's run out of fizz, or we should say he's run out of fuel there. And as his race goes flat, I'm running out of energy drinks here and fizzy drinks pounds. I'm sorry, ladies and gents, but I'm trying my best. Well, he comes on down. Well, right now, this is not the way he wanted it to go. I get the feeling this is going to be a very quick splash and dash. He's going to park up behind the man he was chasing, and well, for a brief moment, he'll say hello to him. But Corey Turner now is going to lose out on a podium opportunity, and that is going to be an upset man as he makes his way out the pit lane. He'll still carry on. He's in 5th now. He'll still have a top 5 on his hands, and given he's the number 12 driver and he started in 6th place, he'll still have made progress today, and he won't be too upset about about that, but I think he'll be kicking himself for the fact he didn't quite have enough fuel to get to the distance and bring home what could have been an incredible drive to the podium. But as he makes his way on around, we look a little bit further back from one BMW driver who's come out the pits to one who makes his way past the pits, and this is going to be none other than Aaron Cook in the number 14 as he comes on down, and was everyone does fall a little bit silent with regards to what is the racing around the circuit. Well, we do have Corey Turner here, who is trying to chase, well, in fact, being chased by Wandre Terrell. We'll keep an eye on that. But I think it does mean that for a brief moment, we are going to get some on-board time here with Harrison Crofer as he takes us around for a flying lap of part of the Nordschleife Loop. We'll run his way through the Schmidt curve then and come carving down into the right-handers. Let's just listen in and enjoy the BMW at its full pace. Absolutely brilliant commitment there from Harrison Crofer, and we're going to follow him all the way up towards Arenberg. Absolute brilliant commitment there, all the way through Schweidenkreuz in towards Arenberg. We've continued to follow him, but unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, we've got some news to bring you from further down the order, and there has been a bit of an incident for Aaron Cook, who was making his way past Daniel Cruz for a brief moment, but he's lost that position, and here's a quick replay to explain how he's dropped outside the top 10 for a brief moment, as we do look back, and I believe this was coming towards the end of the GP loop. Through Vidal he went, and I think we're going to, in fact, I thought he was going to go around at Vidal. No, it was in fact into turn 13, runs a bit deep in the rear, let's go, does he hit the wall? No, he doesn't. He gets it stopped in time, but I think his heart would have been in his mouth there, and the fact carrying too much speed into the road surface transition, and the rear of the BMW coming around much sooner than the front of the car, which is quite difficult to achieve in a front-engine rear-wheel drive machine unless you are going somewhere trying to come down the gearbox very aggressively, and in doing so overspinning the rear tyres, and the rear tyres in the end just spinning up too aggressively for the car to grip up, and that's why we saw the BMW go all the way around. But as we come back to him now, as he makes his way onto the run up towards Schweidenkreuz, making his way around Daniel Cruz, now up into 10th there, and he'll look to just gradually peel off into the distance. As he does so, we've still got some drivers pushing onwards here, including Marcos Hernandez and the number 20 Porsche driver. He's chasing after Ricardo Agrudo as these two continue to make their way onwards. And is that a classic livery there on that Porsche 911? For some reason, I'm getting vibes from very old era Porsche 911s. I don't know why. I'm sure somebody will tell me if I'm right there or not, or alternatively if my brain's going completely Porsche mad. But as he makes his way down, well, Agrudo right now, classic livery or not, it's a very beautiful livery on that, and he's going to try and make his way past Daniel Cruz, albeit that's very close there, going for the compression. In the end, he does get in, but he goes to the grass. Oh no, and he goes onto the barrier. He carries too much speed, comes across the road, and Ricardo Agrudo's race, it ends up in the barriers on the final lap, and that's not the way you want it to go. That's going to drop him all the way down the order, and it releases Marcos Pla Hernandez now up into 12th, and surely Hernandez will gradually take a length off of Cruz. Will gain another place here, and Agrudo, our lowest rated driver in the lobby, who was looking for a great result, it's all end up in tatters and tears by just being a little bit too enthusiastic going through the compression into Ardenau force. But it's so easy to make a mistake there, and in the end was enthusiasm getting him carried away, and he's into the pit lane. I'm hearing he's been towed back there, and he will be at 17th, albeit that's as far as his race will go, and in the end we will only have 16 finishers by looks of things unless any others retire from this point onwards. But as we do see Hernandez trying to make his way past the vehicle of Cruz, looking to the inside into their siphon. Well, that is going to be Daniel Cruz letting him go there, doesn't want to fight it too hard, and through the siphon at hairpin they go, and as they do, Cruz all over the back of him, but Hernandez will gradually pull away, given the fact that Corvette's got so much front end damage that in the draft it won't be able to stay close on the straight, and as they roar their way into the corners, Cruz will stay quite close to the back of his rival, but he'll gradually lose out as they accelerate from the corners. As they do, just need to give a special mention to this Ford GT driver of Roland Hurd. Maybe you will remember earlier on in the race, he ended up in a huge shunt in the barriers, and in the end, it caused himself a huge amount of damage to the point he had to be towed to the pits, and it was all the way up at Steel Strecker when he hit the barrier there, as we did see a similar incident for Tamiki, albeit he didn't go to the barrier, but then Hurt going the full distance, and we're in, and he's gone from a wounded Ford GTE to one that's been fully repaired, and he's back out there now, and he's going to finish a lap down, but he's still going to finish the race in 16th place, and that's the good racer spirit that we do love to see in any class of racing. And the fact he's not going to give up, he is going to see that checker flag. But as he pushes onwards, well from him, let's make our way a little bit further back onto those on the lead lap. And this is Corey Turner in 5th after that last minute second pit stop to put some fuel in the car. He's running 5th and gradually pulling away from Wandro Terrell, who was looking a little bit closer. But Terrell now, I think, might just be nursing the car through to a 6th place finish. And now he can't really put the pressure on any further. Albeit we'll have to wait and see, because of course, as the race closes out, everyone now won't drop their concentration at all, because that's where the mistakes are made on the final lap. When you start to think to yourself, I've only got 4 or 5 more corners to go, it's when you start thinking that's when the big incidents occur, because you take your eye off the prize and the concentration's got to be there all the way to in. As we see a little bit of a wobble there for Terrell as he made his way down the hill out to the right-hander and rolling his way down to Stefan Belofes, whereas he does so very shortly. Albeit first going through Bergwerk, boy, he knows that he's not Bergwerk, Bunchen, I should say, getting my corners mixed up there, getting my B's in the wrong order, and Terrell right now, I think, just settling down into the final few quarters. But looking from him, this is the man who makes his way down the Dottinger. He's not got long to go now before he sees that checkered flag, and Harrison Crofer right now and started on pole, where he's going to finish where he started, but not without pressure from his rivals, particularly in the first half of the race and just after the pit stops. But he does have a comfortable 22.5 second gap to our number 25 driver who started 5th, and Virgilio da Silva, well, he's absolutely loved this race. He's delivered well, albeit he's been promoted to the podium at the fall of others, but that's what happens here at the Nürburgring. Others fall, you'll pick up the pieces by being consistent, and he really hasn't put a foot wrong, minus 1 major off-track, but that off-track in the end coming for reasons whereby he took some evasive action. But as he makes way onwards, Maximilian Berg as well, it's going to be another Corvette on that podium by the looks of things, albeit a very slow Corvette down the straights, but in the corners lightning fast. But come back to the front of the field, and in the end, as the checker flag waves, Harrison Crofer will prove himself a legend and the Nürburgring Gesamtstrecke 24 hours as he takes victory in the BMW M8 Jägermeister machine. And what a drive from the BMW driver there, taking victory by 22 seconds. The end kept honest all the way through by Daniel Cruz, but it wasn't to be for Cruz, but it would be second place for this man, as we'll see Virgilio da Silva come to line then and take the runner-up spot there in the Corvette C8R. What a solid drive from him, and 10 seconds behind him, with a Corvette that was made for quarters but not for speed, it'll be Maximilian Berg who makes it a double podium for Corvette and rounds off your top 3. He crossed the line then, and behind him we then got a further 12 seconds before we do get to the man who started all the way down in 10th, but for Maciej George, he will finish in 4th. He's happy about it. You can see it in the body language of the car as he weaves from side to side. He'll be absolutely grinning into the bank, and as he crosses the line, it will then be Corey Turner in the second of our BMWs who complete the top 5. 3 Corvettes, 2 BMWs in the top 5, and Corey Turner the last of them as he crosses the line. And then it will be 5.5 seconds to Wandro Terrell, the first of our Porsches, who in the end surviving to 6th from a 14th place start by only 1.6 seconds over the Rexy machine that started 20th, Dante Olivia. And then we do have Jacobus Vatikalkas, the American driver, who in the end muscling his way all the way through from 24th to 8th. What a drive from him. The first of our 4 GTs will come across the line. It'll be Philippe Salinas, and a great drive from him as well. The very colourful Ford GT, albeit I think he'll be really could have been a bit further up the order, but still, he won't complain at that. Neil Aaron Cook, who completes your top 10 there in the number 14 at BMW, having started 12th, some small gains. Marcus Playa Hernandez, well, he started 23rd. He'll finish 11th in the end, surviving it all. Not quite on the pace, but to be fair, didn't need to be to get that place, with Mateusz Rogalski, the next driver, to make his way to the end of the race. And well, he's going to survive all the way the distance as he makes his way along. And here he comes, ladies and gentlemen. Give them all a round of applause. It doesn't matter where they finish. The fact they've made it to the finish line, and that is a victory in its own right. Albeit Harrison Crofer really does put himself up in the legendary status at the front of the field. But for Mateusz Rogalski, there's confirmation he finishes 12th, and we've still got a bit of time before our next finishers come on through. But as they do, well, here's Daniel Cruz just cruising along here, and well, I think he might actually be running low on fuel, because this Corvette does not look to be going along at any sense of pace whatsoever. And if so, that is only going to end or bookend what has been a nightmare end to this race already, and turn it into a dream that he'll never want to have once again. Well, that Corvette. The number 1 car, definitely right now, it might be on only 1 litre of fuel. Perhaps he's trying to slip it all the way to the line, but I think very shortly he may have the company of Roland Hurt pushing him along. Well, Hurt's going to make his way through there, the Ford GT, and well, he's going to finish 16th regardless because Hurt is a lap down, but give this man a round of applause as well, ladies and gentlemen. He had a major incident, gets towed to the pits, he stayed in the pit lane. He could have retired and just left, but he stayed, and he's going to finish 16th as a result. And congratulations to him, being in it all the way to win it. And the Ford GT comes on home there in a very fresh state as he crosses the line. But as he does so, well, meanwhile, coming back to Daniel Cruz, I don't think he's got anything left. Can anybody push him along is the question. Well, we've got a long time before we do get to our next cars because Michael Zill is still making his way there all the way into Schwalbenschwanz and Clyde's Carousel. And then we'll have Josef Tamiki just a little bit further behind him in the very wounded Ferrari that's just trying to soldier on here with no rear wing and a lot of body panel damage as well. That Ferrari is not going to be very stable anymore. Oh my lord, that is very sideways there coming through Schwalbenschwanz, and he brings himself into the Collider Carousel. I think he's going to be breathing a big sigh of relief once he gets into the Dottinger because he can finally stop wrangling the car around here. Indeed, right now that's going to be less of a prancing pony and more like a Mustang in a way in terms of the horse, albeit Ford will copyright that for the simple reason he's having to tame it. Well, as he makes his way onto the Dottinger High, now he can breathe for a brief moment, but as he does so, will we then come to Daniel Cruz. He's currently perched there, and that is only about 400 metres from the finish for Daniel Cruz. Can anybody give him a push along? Well, right now, Michael Zill's making his way on down. In the all-black BMW, can he potentially give a little bit of a boost to the Corvette driver? We'll have to wait and see. And as he makes way underneath the Bill Street billboard and all the way now into Hornbrain to complete his race. Well, coming on through at left into right. Daniel Cruz, I believe, unfortunately, has had to tow to the pits, ladies and gentlemen. So, therefore, Zill will take up 13th place in the end, and Cruz will be classified at the end as your 15th place finisher because he will be demoted back a lap as a result of towing. So, congratulations to Michael Zill. Will take 13th place on the road there, and as he does, it's then only a further 10 seconds to our final finisher to the checker flag. Josef Tamiki was fighting for the podium, but a late error cost him dear, but still gets it home. 14th place, but ruin what could have been as he takes the end of the race. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, as all the drivers park it up and bring it to a close, let's take a look at those race results subject to Eddie Stewart's inquiries. And here they are, and goodness me, what a race. So after 45 minutes of racing here at the Nürburgring Combined, on the Nürburgring Gesamtstrecke 24-hour in Germany, we saw for week number 11's top split broadcast on this Wednesday, the 28th of May, for the 2025 Season 2 campaign of the iRacing official GTE Sprint Series. Harrison Crover, your victor in the end, having started on pole, we delivered all the way through a thrilling drive there in the BMW M8, and taking victory by 22.1 seconds over Giulio Da Silva, albeit that 22 seconds not representative of the pressure that Daniel Cruz kept on Harrison Crover all the way through, and that pressure almost exploded on him at one point as he was making his way in at lap number 4 into the opening part of the Nordschleife loop, but in the end the pressure got to Daniel Cruz instead. Virgilio Da Silva, meanwhile, there was no pressure to take second place. He picked up the pieces where others dropped it, and for the Brazilian driver it was then to Maximilian Berg, who finished third there, and a brilliant drive for the number 17 to round off the podium and make it a double Corvette podium, but BMW on the top step. Maciej Jaws finished in 4th there, and a fantastic drive for the number 6 driver, holding off a fast-charging Corey Turner, who in the end, if he put in a bit more fuel in his pit stop, could he have finished on the podium? Well, gut instinct would say yes, he could have, but unfortunately in relegated to 5th. Juanjo Terrell finishing 6th there, the British driver, having a solid drive in the Porsche 911, the leading Porsche 911 RSR, ahead of the Flanders Racing Team driver of Dante Oliva, and then we see from the Belgian driver to the American of Jacobus Vasikaukas, we finished in 8th place there, but a solid drive from the all-yellow machine. In 9th, it was Philippe Salinas, our leading Ford GT, and well, Salinas in the end having a brilliant drive there in his own right, with Aaron Cook completing your top 10, and outside the top 10, best the rest in length, it was Marcos Pla Hernandez ahead of Mateusz Rogalski and Michael Zill and Josef Tamiki completing a top 14, and all 14 of those drivers completing the race on the lead lap. Unfortunately for Daniel Cruz, what was looking to be a battle for the win and also a run for second, well, in the end, it was 15th. A lap down, having to tow to the pits without fuel right at the end in a heavily wounded Corvette. But credits where he's due, he tried to get it on home. But he was still ahead of Ricardo Agrudo, who had that huge incident with the wall going into Ardenau Force on the final lap. And Roland Hurt, in the end, classified as 17th, even though he did finish the race on circuit in 16th. So that might have to be corrected after the race, but we'll have to see. But the Ford GT driver there, despite the difficulties, we made it to the end a lap down, and well done to him. 3 laps down, and these were all of your retirements. We had Pedro Amor, also Philippe Helstein, and then 5 laps down, it was Gerald Steiner, who finished in 20th place as classified, and we also had retirements for Giovanni Fini, Sylvain Depech, Simon Bamber, Kevin Van Ottela, Petros Timolis, Till Nordman, and Maris Blendia. So 27 starters, ladies and gentlemen. In the end, a grand total of 17 classified finishers, of which there were 14 on the lead lap. And that brings our chapter of the story for the Season 2 campaign to a close at the Nürburgring Gesamtstrecke 24 Hours. And what a circuit. The Goliath of motorsport in Germany does never disappoint, and it did disappoint today. But with that, as the circuit falls silent and we leave the German countryside, what it does mean now, it's time for us to wrap up and look ahead to next time. Because, of course, next time, ladies and gentlemen, it is our season finale, and where better to bring things to a close with the tight confines of a street circuit. And we're going to be taking a trip back in time to 2023, as our drivers will get ready to roar the way around the Detroit Grand Prix circuit at Bellwell Park in the US state of Michigan. It's going to be close, it's going to be tight, overtaking is going to be incredibly tricky, and it's going to put a huge price on qualifying and strategy, but who will come out on top in our final week of racing? We'll be back to our ultimate slot of the 1900 GMT or UTC slot on Friday, the 6th of June 2025. Be there to see how it all concludes. But until then, we've been the iRacing official GTE Sprint Series. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX1 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay on track. Good night.